August 20, 1998, past 1:30 in the morning, at the Jawar Kili Training Complex, Khost Province, Afghanistan, deep in the mountains near the Pakistani border. 4 U.S. Navy warships and the submarine USS Columbia sit anchored in the Arabian Sea, missile hatches open, crews silent, everyone waiting for a presidential order. 79 Tomahawk cruise missiles streak north across the desert night, each one guided by satellite coordinates fed to targeting computers hours earlier by analysts in Virginia. Below, the camps sit nearly empty. Bin Laden had been warned. He left for Kabul, instead of staying for the meeting the CIA had expected him to attend. When the smoke clears, somewhere between 6 and 30 fighters lie dead, a few tents smolder into rubble, and the man America wanted most is alive. But let's change one thing. Instead of blind missiles fired at empty camps hours after the fact, imagine an armed Predator drone circling that site since dawn. The MQ-1 Predator, 36 feet from wingtip to wingtip, cruises at 84 miles an hour, carrying 2 laser-guided Hellfire missiles tucked beneath each slender folded wing. This is not the unarmed reconnaissance drone the CIA flew over Afghanistan in 2000, but the weaponized version tested in the Nevada desert 3 full years early. Rewind to January 1996. Alex Station opens inside CIA headquarters, a cramped office run by analyst Michael Schur, dedicated to tracking one single elusive target. Now give Schur's small team a drone loitering 20,000 feet above Khartoum, watching bin Laden's walled compound through an infrared camera that never blinks or looks away. Sudan expels him that May, under mounting American pressure. He boards a chartered flight bound for Jalalabad, and the drone operator radios one quiet confirmation. Cost so far in this alternate timeline: 11 hours of flight time, 1 successful surveillance pass, 0 missiles fired, and a location intelligence had never held before. By mid-1997, the Northern Alliance threatens to overrun Jalalabad, forcing bin Laden to relocate south to a walled agricultural compound called Tarnak Farms, outside Kandahar. The drone follows him there, orbiting silently above cracked mud walls and a dusty training ground where black turban fighters drill with rifles in the open heat. Analysts sitting in Virginia now watch a tall man in flowing white robes walk the same courtyard every evening as they would 3 years later. A plan takes shape that autumn. Afghan tribal agents, codenamed Trodmaind, could attempt a capture, or the armed drone circling overhead could end the manhunt outright. Washington hesitates for months. Lawyers argue over assassination orders banned since the mid-1970s, while the Predator watches, burning fuel, logging coordinates, waiting for legal permission. Costs so far: roughly 400 flight hours logged, 3 confirmed sightings recorded, 1 ground operation canceled, and a legal argument much unresolved in Washington. August 7, 1998. 2 truck bombs packed with explosives detonate almost simultaneously outside the U.S. embassies in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, within 4 minutes. 224 people die that morning, 12 of them American citizens, and more than 4,000 others are wounded across the 2 East African capitals. The drone circling above Tarnak Farms picks up a sudden burst of radio traffic minutes before both blasts, a pattern analysts had never seen there before. Now the escalating wave hits harder. Of waiting days for after-action confirmation, the operator flags the movement live, and Washington authorizes an immediate strike order. 2 Hellfire missiles leave the rails at 9,000 feet, 45 seconds of flight time, guided precisely by a laser locked onto the courtyard below. No decades-old Tomahawks lobbed blind at long empty tents this time. A single guided strike, timed to the man's known evening walk, arrives in total silence. Cost so far in this version: 2 Hellfire missiles spent, 6 flight hours logged, 1 confirmed high-value strike, and a geopolitical firestorm no blind cruise missile caused. Pakistan's ISI, which had run training programs at nearby camps for years, loses several officers in that same strike, and Islamabad's fury with Washington deepens overnight. The Taliban, sheltering a guest now killed on their own soil, refuses to hand over anybody, and recruitment videos multiply within a few weeks. Al-Qaeda's remaining leadership, including his deputy Ayman al-Zawahiri, scatters into smaller independent cells, each one harder for any single drone orbit to track or target. Costs so far: 1 high-value target eliminated, 3 new safe houses hastily established, and a movement now too decentralized for 1 lonely aircraft to watch alone. By 1999, intelligence intercepts fragmented chatter about a Millennium plot targeting Los Angeles International Airport tied loosely to the scattered remnants of the old network. A second armed drone, quickly reassigned from Kandahar, loiters over suspected safe houses near Peshawar, but the trail keeps splitting endlessly into smaller, quieter cells. Jordanian and American agents arrest Ahmed Rassam at the Canadian border that December, foiling the Millennium Plot entirely without a single missile ever being fired. Cost so far, 2,000 cumulative flight hours logged across 4 years, one founding leader dead, dozens of lieutenants scattered, and no clean final victory achieved. October 12, 2000. The USS Cold docks in Aden, Yemen, for what was meant to be a routine, unremarkable refueling stop in the narrow, crowded harbor. A small skiff, loaded with explosives, pulls quietly alongside the destroyer and detonates, tearing a 40-foot hole straight through the ship's hull below the waterline. 17 American sailors die that day, and 39 more are wounded, in an attack the scattered network eagerly claims within days of the devastating blast. No drone was watching Aden that morning. Surveillance had followed the man himself, not the method, and the method kept adapting long after he was gone. This is the running cost the entire campaign never quite manages to solve. Kill the founder, and the surviving network learns to operate without one at all. Cost so far: 1 high-value target down, 2 plots averted, 1 deadly attack carried out, and a war now fought against an idea of a man. Pentagon planners in this alternate timeline shift doctrine early, distributing armed predators across Yemen, Pakistan, and the Horn of Africa well before the year 1999 ends. Each aircraft costs $4 million to build, burns about 40 gallons of fuel an hour, and can loiter above a target for 14 straight hours. Ground crews sitting in trailers thousands of miles away now fly missions once reserved for pilots risking capture over hostile, unforgiving mountain terrain below them. The technology outpaces the policy at every turn. Congress debates covert killing authority for years while operators watch targets they are not yet legally cleared to strike. Cost so far: 12 full airframes deployed, 6,000 cumulative flight hours logged, 1 confirmed kill on record, and a legal framework years behind the hardware itself. By 2001, the fractured network slowly rebuilds under new, more cautious leadership, cells hardened against single-point surveillance, meeting in person instead of over open radios. Bin Laden's death in 1998 becomes a martyrdom story recruiters use for years afterward, proof, they claim to new followers, that America fears him now. The very drone that killed him becomes propaganda too, framed by his followers as cowardly, a machine sent because no soldier would dare face him directly. Analysts who once celebrated the successful strike now quietly study whether removing one single man ever slows an organization built to outlive its own founder. Cost so far: 1 campaign declared a success, a full decade of fragmented cells active worldwide, and a fierce debate about decapitation strikes left unresolved. Historians studying this alternate timeline note something genuinely uncomfortable. The intelligence existed for a strike years before the real predator ever carried a live missile. In the real, unaltered timeline, the armed predator was not tested with live Hellfire missiles until February 2001, 7 months before the attacks it might have prevented. In that real timeline, the CIA watched Tarnak Farms through an unarmed reconnaissance drone during the fall of 2000, filming a man without striking him. Officials debated an armed version of the aircraft through the winter of 2000, delayed repeatedly by cost disputes between the CIA and the United States Air Force. The core technology existed in working prototype years earlier than anyone acted on it. The bureaucracy, the legal doctrine, and the political will did not exist in time. This alternate history asks a harder question than whether a drone could have found him sooner. It asks what killing him years early would have changed. Networks built on ideology rarely collapse the moment their founder dies. Al-Qaeda's own structure, cellular and dispersed, was designed to survive this kind of scenario. Even a perfect strike carried out in 1998 leaves behind training camps, financiers, and a growing global media apparatus spreading his message far beyond Afghanistan's borders. The 9 other hijack planners, the flight schools, the box cutters purchased years later, none of that required bin Laden's presence to keep moving forward. So the drone finds him early. The missile hits its mark. The man dies 3 years ahead of schedule. And the question the history books cannot answer remains. Would removing one man in 1998 have prevented September 11th, or would it have changed which name history remembers as the one who inspired it? The technology arrived in time, at least in this version of events. The judgment required to use it wisely may never have quite caught up in time. Consider the numbers stacked end to end. 11 hours over Khartoum, 400 over Kandahar, 2 hellfires spent, 17 sailors lost years later in Yemen. Every stage of this hypothetical campaign wins its immediate objective and loses something larger, a pattern that echoes through decades of drone warfare that followed afterward. Real armed predators eventually flew thousands of strikes across Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia after 2001, chasing the same decentralized pattern this earlier timeline glimpses first. Each strike removes a name from a list and adds a story to a recruiting pitch, a trait historians are trying to properly measure decades later. The drone that could have found Osama bin Laden in 1996 was not built yet. The willingness to use one built took years longer still. Technology rarely waits for policy, and policy rarely moves as fast as the engineers who build the tools meant eventually to serve it, however reluctantly. In this alternate 1990s, the machine arrives first. In the real one, the policy caught up after nearly 3,000 people died in a morning. That gap between what a machine could already do and what a government was willing to authorize is the real story this alternate timeline tells. So imagine the drones circling Tarnak farms in 1997, watching, waiting, capable, grounded not by weather or fuel but by lawyers arguing in Washington offices. What would you have authorized? Watching that same courtyard, knowing what history would show but not yet knowing whether the strike would change anything at all.